My name is Samara Morris and I've been a fashion photographer for the past 15 years. However, I have now retrained as a coach to help women with low self-esteem and body dysmorphia issues, because I felt that I was just exacerbating the problem, putting out unrealistic images of women that were highly retouched and amending their body shape. I also have a yoga brand which looks at art as therapy. Today I'm on my way to meet Evangelia Chyriskou, who is a medical architect at the Bartlett Real Estate Institute. Today we're going to be talking about how buildings can affect our mental health and looking at the difference between physical healthcare centres and mental healthcare centres and how they differ.
I am interested in how people, when they are ill, interact with their built environment, the hospitals, the GP centres and mental health facilities in particular. I'm looking at the space outside, how we approach them, what we see before we enter, how they feel, furniture and fittings inside these facilities, what are the elements in the environment that would help them become better sooner.
From being on the road, travelling a lot as a fashion photographer, not having a base and living out of a bag, I'm interested to learn today about the different elements of how our environment and spaces affect our mental health and what can be done to improve it.
Samara, thank you so much for coming here today at the Bartlett Real Estate Institute in our new building. So, what has been your experience with mental health?
For me, it's been quite a long journey with mental health. Mainly, the biggest thing for me was anxiety. And I had a bad accident 5 years ago, and I had post-traumatic stress syndrome. I broke my back in 4 places in a wave in Sri Lanka. And whilst my body had taken the time to heal, my mind hadn't. So with post-traumatic stress, I was suffering badly with just acute anxiety, the fear that something bad was going to happen, that feeling of isolation, which linked into me trying to mask it. My biggest form of masking, emotional numbing they call it, was with alcohol. And it just got worse and worse, really. I couldn't leave the house. It was just awful. It was a really bad time. So now I had looked at ways in which I could help myself. And that was really looking at the kind of key areas of our lives, which is like the mind, the body and the soul, and really kind of reevaluating everything in that part of my life that I could do. So from my diet to my meditations to mindfulness to creativity to all those kind of key areas that really helped me.
Your work as a photographer has been influenced by this experience.
Yes, absolutely. I was a photographer for 15 years. Well, I still am, but I was very much working in fashion. And after my accident, I had a real awakening into the fact that I was putting out images that were unrealistic of women. So in regards to like the retouching element of it and kind of changing the body image and the size and the airbrushing and everything that we're kind of so used to now in today's society, and that putting out those images that we're meant to look perfect, and younger generation of kids growing up, and especially females, thinking we're meant to look like that when ultimately it's not real. So I made a decision to stop my retouching and amending the image, the body. So I made a decision to retrain to help women with low self-esteem and confidence issues, and then the images that I'm putting out aren't retouched anymore. Alongside that, I also, during the time of my accident, set up a creative lifestyle brand, which is at the moment focused on yoga mats and how art is therapy. And it's very therapeutic. When you create, you're not thinking about anything else, you're in that moment. And I think there's something really important with that. So yeah, for me, it's very, very important as art is therapy, and it always has been with me. So you work around the field of architecture and mental health. What exactly does that mean, and what do you do?
I work in the field of architecture, but I would say the built environment in general, but from the angle of mental illness. So how spaces can be therapeutic for people with mental illness that are compatible with their physiology and their perception of the world. And for me, who knows best is the patients. My work has been mostly asking people who are hospitalized in mental health facilities and people who work as staff members to tell me how the building should be, how their experiences are, and try to make sense.
Can you give us an example of some of the research that you've conducted?
Something that I found is that we tend to make our facilities in the last few years, a bit more over-engineered, I would say. People would tell me I cannot shower, for example, or I cannot shower comfortably in a mental health facility, because let's say you have to wash yourself, but you only have 2 hands, and you have to press the cold button or the hot button, because there are these special mental health taps, and you don't have a hand to wash yourself. So either you freeze or you burn yourself. So getting things right, like the temperature of the room. I have been in mental health facilities and conducted research during the heat wave last summer. And there were riots, but of course, I mean, we would have exactly the same thing here if this was happening. If we couldn't go out, because people in mental health facilities, they cannot always go out, and they are restricted within a room or within a ward, a corridor. They don't have an option. And it's their body after all. And you feel you want to go to the garden, and sometimes the garden is stripped of everything that you would need to have a nice time in the garden, because it might not be secure enough. So, and you don't have any other choice. If I can have a cup of tea that I prepared on my own, because there is or there is not a kitchen or a kitchenette to do that, and let's say if I can do something to make my room feel my own or not, like put a poster on the wall or have a shelf to put some personal belongings. So things like that. Once I have a better understanding about how the psychiatric space works, the next step is always to go back to the people who are involved in the design of these buildings and tell them my findings. I would say my most important finding is that people who live in these environments know better. So involving the patients in the whole process of design and giving them a voice, for me that's the most important message. It sounds very simple, but I would say that was the biggest contribution I could make.
Yeah, I think it's, your environment is so important for your mental health. For me, when I was on the road travelling a lot, shooting swimwear, and I'd be going from country to country and moving every couple of weeks and living out of a bag, it was really unsettling for me. And I realised the importance of actually having a base and a home and that safe place that you can go back to, that you can create your own as well. So from the lighting to the mood to the music to all these things, like the candles, even things like that make such a difference. For example, a space like this with a beautiful bright light coming through, plants are a big one, just the space in general, not kind of horrible noises or anything like that coming through. So yeah, I think it's really important. It has been for me, definitely.
Do you think that the design of the buildings and the architecture can help people come together and discuss more openly about their mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important kind of fundamentals as well is that need for connection. As humans, we need that connection, and often when you are depressed or whatnot, you feel you want to isolate yourself. So, environments and spaces where you can get that connection and groups of people coming together, and that age-old saying where your vibe attracts your tribe. And I think it's very true, and being able to have that space where you can all come together and in a nice environment and talk and create or do something active or whatever it might be, or learn. I think it's really important.
I know you did a podcast. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How did this help you talk about mental health?
Yeah, sure. The podcast I did was called Fail and Succeed, and I basically was very open and kind of embraced the power of vulnerability and discussed my own journey with mental health, how I recovered from my accident, how my body had healed but my mind hadn't. I discussed openly about my issues that I had with addictions, with insomnia, with depression, and just kind of laid all really. And I was really surprised at the support that I got and the feedback, because I was quite nervous as well about kind of putting it out there, and that always aim of trying to be perfect, and I just thought, no, hang on, it's got to start with me. If I'm on this journey now and I'm really wanting to raise awareness, then I have to do what I believe in, and that's speak openly about it and not try and be like, oh, everything's fine and I'm fine, and that poker face that we put on, and again trying to be perfect. So yeah, that was a really big turning point for me on this journey. And since then, I'm an ambassador for MQ Charity. I go to a lot of talks for them, and in a couple of weeks I'm going to a convent school and talking to young girls about their mental health and taking care of themselves. And it's just stemmed from that podcast really, of being open and vulnerable and discussing my own challenges with mental health. So yeah, it was a really big turning point for me, and I'm really glad that I did it. How do mental health facilities compare with kind of general facilities like hospitals, for example?
That's a very nice question. We had the chance to look the mental health facilities of a specific area, how they compare with the health facilities of that area by looking at the map, where they sit on the map, and they were very far from tube stations compared to the health facilities. So for a health facilities, you would say, I need to go here today, there, and I take the tube and I am 2 minutes walk. And for the mental health facilities, you might need more than 20 minutes walk. And the other thing is that we noticed that health facilities, they scream that they are healthcare facilities. They say it with big fonts on the facade of the building. They also have ornaments and objects and sculptures, and this might say to people, look at me and pay attention to me, I'm important as a building. Mental health facilities, I mean, you normally cannot spot them, so this is not necessarily bad because people might want to be private, but then again, it's not so easy to talk about mental health when the buildings are hidden. Sometimes you cannot find the entrance, there is no canopy to protect you from the rain, and that might be for ligature purposes. Buildings tend to be very straight, again because people fear that if there is a balcony, somebody might reach that balcony and they might harm themselves. So in that sense, they are very plain, very anti-ligature, and you can see it from the outside. And even the colors, mental health, the buildings tend to be a bit more domestic looking in terms of materials and like brickwork, and sometimes the presence of graffiti. So if you see London hospitals, they tend to be nice and shiny. So mental health facilities, they tend to have a fair amount of vandalism. They are like poor relatives. This is something we need to change, because imagine a person that they struggle with mental illness, and what they see, the facade of that building, is the last thing they see for quite some time from the external world. We want to create an image that is reassuring and that you are here because you want to become well, not because you are punished.
So what do you feel are the next steps? What needs to be done for architects to kind of help this and reinforce this message?
We have to try to listen to the people who are involved, how they want their buildings to be from the inside and the outside. The message that they convey to the community, to their neighbors, because what we saw now from this small research project is that although the stigma around mental illness is not the same that it used to be, like the big asylums in the countryside around big walls, there is a different stigma. So the stigma is still there, but it's different. This change in physiology and perception has to be a common understanding for the people who are involved in the design, the commissioning of mental health facilities, architects and mental health professionals and patients. They don't have the same understanding. We have to bring these people in the same room and help them establish this common language, and then they can co-create these new buildings or change the existing buildings.
Evangelina, thank you so much for today. I've really learned a lot, even down to little things like the plants and lighting, the colour scheme. And yeah, I've really learned so much, so thank you so much for your time.
Good luck with your creative work, your photography, your work that you are doing with women and coaching them and supporting them. I'm so happy we had the chance.